develop a second presentation because there obviously is an interest in people who might want to do that. Okay, so without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Jensen.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me, and I think it is a good evening to talk about color. Look how gloomy it is out there for sure. So yes, we're going to talk about paint with blooms and what we can do with color in our gardens. And according to the experts, I'm just going to read this part, that the human eye can distinguish 7 to 10 million colors. I found that kind of hard to believe. And then I thought the last time I was in a paint store and I was looking at all the different whites there were, that maybe there are so many colors. But our experience of color really depends not only on the wavelength of the color and the light that hits our retina, but also the context in which we perceive it. The background colors, the lighting, the familiarity, and the surroundings. So in this presentation, it's mainly perennials that I'm going to show you. There are occasional annuals as well. But you will also see suggestions for using colors together. And I never say there's any wrong combinations, but there's probably some that are better. Okay? So color usually means in bloom to me, I think for most people when they're in their garden. And, oh, I'm moving away, right?
You're good.
I'm good. So I always think it's good if you have a gardening journal, and maybe you don't even need a gardening journal these days, because most of us, when we go out into the garden, we take our iPhones with us for snapping pictures, and we can see exactly what's in bloom in our garden at the date and time. But about August every year, I kind of like to do a walk around my garden and kind of think back. What was blooming in the spring? What was blooming in the summer? What's blooming now? Are there any gaps? Because we don't really want gaps. We want to see color all throughout our garden season. And I find, or maybe it was me, but when I started gardening, I wanted to put all of my favorite flowers in it. I wasn't thinking about bloom time. I just wanted to put there the ones that I like. So you have to ask yourself if there's some gaps. When are they? Research and come up with a plan. Sometimes when we say plan, you're thinking of graph paper and, maybe designing that might be beyond our ability. But it could be as simple as what we call stretch out your arms planting. So this was in a book, Jean Belot. When I joined Master Gardeners about 15 years ago, somebody recommended that I get his book on perennials, just to kind of get to know all those Latin names, right? And most of us don't read the foreword in a book, but his friend Marjorie Hole in the foreword said, if you stretch out your arms and plant, take that as a diameter, I'm short. Some of you that are taller have longer arms. But, I'm thinking between 5 and 6 feet diameter. If you plant one spring blooming plant, one summer blooming plant, one fall blooming plant, and then you plant a fourth one, maybe just interesting texture leaves, something that makes interest in your garden. And then you repeat that. And all of a sudden, you've got a simple design that's going to give you blooms throughout the season. And then take pictures, as I said. So what satisfies our eye when we're looking at a garden? Well, repetition. If you have, maybe you have rudbeckia blooming in this bed and rudbeckia blooming there, and maybe in another bed over here, what that does is it kind of entices your eye to look around the garden to see everything, even if it's the same color. So repetition is a good thing in the garden. And then a perception of fullness. Most landscape architects will say you need a minimum of 3 plants blooming at the same time to give you that kind of fullness. And then that garden design with something blooming every season. I know I had another Master Gardener friend come to my garden, I think it was late June. It was after most of the spring stuff had gone, and she said, gosh, I don't have anything much blooming right now. So, you know, kind of look for the opportunities to have that continuous bloom. And then you add in everything else, you know, your trees, your shrubs, your hardscape, your annuals. I have lots of herbs in my garden, art, a little bit of whimsy, and wow, you know, you have a garden. So it's always important just to emphasize the tips to get the best in your from your perennials. And we get a lot of questions. I'm on the Facebook admin team, so we get a lot of questions is maybe something isn't blooming. And so we have to kind of be like Columbo. Does everyone here know who Columbo is? Yes, the detective. Did you ever watch the TV series? Yes. And he always got to the root of everything. So, you know, maybe you put it in a sunny location because that's what it needs. But now shrubs have grown up, trees have grown up, maybe you planted a garden shed, something's getting shade. Maybe it's not getting the light conditions. Maybe it needs to be divided. Some perennials do need to be divided every 3 to 5 years. They'll really do better. Maybe you're using too much fertilizer. I don't use any fertilizer in my perennial beds at all, especially if you're giving a fertilizer with high first number like nitrogen. That's just going to give you lots of lush green growth, right? Not what we want. So kind of be like Columbo, figure out what's going on with your plant. Improving the soil, I leave my leaves. It looks a little messy until everything gets grown up, but the earthworms and other detritivores will break that down and add to my soil. I add compost, not every year, but I do add compost to my beds. And the first year that you plant that perennial, definitely be more attentive to watering. It was a tough summer last year, wasn't it? With all the drought, any new plants that went in, they needed a lot of attention. And then deadheading. There's times when you cut off the spent blooms, you're going to get a second flush of blooms. Dividing, as I mentioned, and sometimes cutting back. So we'll talk about those as we go through some of these. So the average time for perennials is 3 weeks. Most of them will just give you 3 weeks. There are a few that give you a longer bloom, and you probably know the ones in your garden. So in my garden, it's things like catmint. That's one where I give it a shear after it blooms, and it'll bloom for me again. Geranium, roseanne, or azure rush. Do any of you have that in your gardens? That geranium? It's almost, I have it like a brown cover, but it's got a blue flower. It's quite pretty. I think it was roseanne that was perennial of the year one year. And it'll start blooming in June and it'll bloom till frost. You'll get blue flowers. So it's a good one to have. Echinacea, of course, coneflower, rudbeckia, balloon flower. That's coreopsis in my garden, and it really gives me a good long bloom. Blanket flower hasn't done as good in my clay soil. It certainly blooms for a long period. It just hasn't lasted a lot of years in my garden. Rudbeckia and sedum. Those are some that bloom a little longer. Maybe you've got some in your garden. And most of those I find really hold up to whatever conditions Mother Nature gives us. But these are reliable early perennials. Some of them are natives, like that's the Virginia bluebells that are just starting to appear, not blooming yet. So, I mean, and they will disappear because they're ephemerals, but those are some reliable early ones in our gardens. And you may have some others to add to the list. So May, 28 colors just starting. You can see alliums. The little blue flowers are ansonia. There's poppies, irises. Of course, I have all the bulbs, you know, the tulips and the daffodils and so forth. Fritillaria, snowdrops are showing now, but a lot of color. I mean, the spring is really about color in our gardens. But these are more early beauties from my source. There. So the trillium, I think some of you probably have trillium. I've got bloodroot as well, but I didn't put it up here. Irises, That white flower up there, that's the false Stephanotis, I guess that's how you say it. It's Semantium, it's in the same family as one of the invasives that we don't want, but this one's not an invasive, and if I cut back that, so like a little shrub, grows up like a little shrub, if I shear it back, I'll get another flush of flowers. White House perennials was where I got that years ago, and I see that they're still selling. And then the Trolleus is in the corner. It's actually, it's in the same family as Ranunculus. So if you like Ranunculus, this is a lot easier than Ranunculus to grow. And then Pulmonaria. So lots of nice spring beauties and color. And then we come into summer. And so these are reliable summer perennials. And I put phlox here because phlox comes in the summer in my garden. And it's another long blooming flower for our garden. If we deadhead or cut off the spent blooms, we'll get lots of blooms coming from this side. So you'll get quite a few weeks with that. So these are all reliable summer blooms. And this is kind of a messier part of my garden, but you can see the Crocosmia and the balloon flowers. And where you see kind of that green in the front, that was the Amsonia, which had blue flowers. Now it's just got feathery foliage. So late season reliable perennials. We don't want to think about late season. We want spring to get here, right? We don't want to think about the end. But so in my garden bed, you can see there's Brunera that gave me blue flowers in the spring. And there is the turtle head there, or the Shilon. And so those are some, and I think I have all of those in my garden. So they're all late season reliable. And then, so Rudbeckia, asters, obedience plant, lots of things still blooming in that part of the garden. And then these are September, October blooms in the garden. The colchicum or the crocus, you probably, if some of you have it, you're seeing the leaves now, and then we'll get the blooms later. And then just an aster that's blooming. And then for my Thanksgiving table, I was still able to go out. I found this turkey planter that I think is great. And so sedum and dahlias, and that little rose in there is just one of those $5 roses that you get at you know, the grocery store and then put in your garden. It's great. And yeah, so it's amazing what the colors can last through the season. So as well as having flowers in my garden, I like to see who's visiting my flowers. And I'm trying now as if I lose a perennial or it's, not exciting me anymore and I take it out, I'm really trying to put more native plants in my garden. I know that there'll be less work for me as time goes on. It's just to find that I have the right conditions for the one I want. But what happens is I want to see wonderful pollinators and beneficial insects. And so the Canadian Wildlife Foundation tell us to have a great diversity of flowers in bloom at any time from early spring to fall. And then various colors, because even some of the insects like bees really like blue, yellow, and purple flowers. And we know, of course, if we have red flowers like that's Crocosmia, the hummingbird moths are going to come to that as well. And then a diversity of flower shapes. So pollinators vary in size. We have the tiny little syrphid flies that are wonderful pollinators, but they're so tiny next to a bee. So, they need different kinds they need shallow flowers probably, so they can really get to the nectar quickly. And so just looking at some of them, so That's a painted lady butterfly, and that's a heptacodium that I have in my garden. I don't know if any of you have a heptacodium, and just on the edge for even being hardy here, but I saw it in somebody's garden and I love it because it blooms. It's probably about 10 to 12 feet high now and probably 8 feet wide, and it's covered with those white blooms in September. So it's like it's like it hums with bees. And this was a painted lady, and I don't remember a few years ago, there was just all kinds of painted lady butterflies that were kind of resting here in Ottawa or in Montreal. I think they were waiting for a particular wind to take them south. And that, when I went out, that was just covered. I just didn't have my camera with me, but I did come back and capture one. And there's a hummingbird moth on a monarda. Grasshopper on an aster. That's a monarch butterfly visiting milkweed in my garden. And this one is really, you can see why butterflies are always on posters and things because they are so beautiful. This is the eastern tiger swallowtail on the Oenpera in my garden, which is another lovely, I have the native one, and the foliage in the fall turns kind of a little red. So it's a nice one. So now we're going to talk more about using colors. We want to have color from spring to fall. But I don't know if any of you have been to Giverny, like Monet's garden. Have any of you visited there? Yes, okay. So this was way back in the 90s when I went. So I didn't have an iPhone at that time. That picture I took with one of those disposable Kodak cameras. And so it was this lily pond. But he is just amazing. I'm going to try to see if I can remember lessons. Some of the things that he said. He famously said, I perhaps having become a painter to flowers, and my garden is my most beautiful masterpiece. And certainly it was completely filled with flowers. And he used his garden as his living canvas where he would try out combinations of colors. So then in 2012, I went to, we were in the Bronx because my husband had to see the new New York Yankees stadium, right? There's certain things that are important in life. But I went to the New York Botanical Gardens, and that was their show that summer. They were talking about Monet and gardens. So I picked up that little book, and if you go to their website, you can still find a little bit of information about him and his gardens. But he did some interesting things. He would put blue flowers. He would plant them under the shade, if he could, of a tree where the shadows would accentuate the blue in the flowers. He reminds us as gardeners that the eyes need to rest, as well as, have periods when you're looking around a garden where it's just not so much color. Your eyes need a little point to rest. He would plant pastel colors behind the same color in a darker hue. So say if he was going to have a red color at the front of the bed, maybe the next one would be a paler red and then a really pale red, because what that does is it gives you depth and perspective to look at, is how he would use colors. And he would put fiery gold and bronze flowers on the western side of a garden bed because their color would be accentuated by the setting sun. So those were some of the things he did with his gardens, and then he probably did the same thing in his paintings. And then the color wheel. So that is just online, that one. I just picked up one at the paint store. But we know our primary colors of red, yellow, and blue, and they're very strong colors. So there's different shades of them, but they are strong colors. Complementary colors are the ones that are across from them on the wheel. And they're also very bold, like red and green, yellow and purple. I think blue and orange is my favorite combination in the garden. And then analogous colors are the ones that are next to each other on the color wheel. So not as less contrast. And then some people want a monochromatic garden. Some people want all white flowers, all blue flowers, whatever. So they will do that. So if you're planting hot colors, like I describe these as hot colors, they really, even if they're over there, they really seem to come right up into your face. And they can make a large garden space feel a little bit more intimate as well. So that might be something you would want to use. And then soft colors like pale blues, silvers, soft whites really draw us in. Kind of this Honorine Joubert anemone is kind of drawing us into the corner of this house. And then if you have space, I don't, I just have a small garden, suburban garden, but we're always encouraged to plant in 3s or 5s or 7s. So to give drifts rather than sprinkles. Now I do have some sprinkles in my garden in places because I can't always afford to buy 3 plants or 5 plants or 7 at once. And I'll probably take the opportunity to divide them later on, which is an economical way of getting more plants. But if you have the space, it's really quite lovely to be able to do that. And this was a whole area of lavender that Jillian had in her garden. So it was really a drift. It was really fragrant and peaceful. It was quite lovely. So complementary colors. I was at Mary Ann's and I took this picture, Van Berlo, and it was just the dianthus was in bloom and nothing else was in bloom right around it. So you did have the red and green, and that's really Christmas colors, as we would say. But this is, as I say, orange and blue are really my favorite combination. So Pinka has her false blue indigo here with poppies. I have the false blue indigo in my garden too, but I have irises, purple irises, Siberian irises near my poppies. And then I just did this pot with, just threw in some marigold seeds. I wasn't a great lover of marigolds, but I really like these guys and I like them. And the blue flowers are hummingbird sage. I didn't see very many hummingbirds come to them, but it's a nice, so I've done that arrangement a few years in a row because I like it. And then analogous colors, so next to each other or near each other, different shades of them. And I would say that this is an analogous color scheme from Edith. And then I think this is what I call color magic. So we know reds and pinks and oranges are all going to be close to each other in the color wheel. But what makes it really work is if the concentration of the colors is similar. So it's a good deep pink. It's not too, it's not too wimpy looking. It's got a nice color, the same as the red. And so I think it's really, really striking. And as we age, our eyes actually can take, we want stronger contrast, like the blues and the greens and that. And I kind of see that in my own gardening experience. I probably had paler flowers and that when I was younger planting, but now I kind of like the deeper colors in my garden. This was unintentional monochromatic. Because sometimes you plant things before anything else is in bloom around it. So this was asters, mums, and obedient plant. But when you have monochromatic or mainly one color, it leaves your eyes free to look at the shape of the flower. Maybe I see the obedient flower shape a little better there. If there was, because all the colors are the same, if they were different, my eyes might be taken by the colors. So you can pick up foliage, you can pick up different things. And then you can kind of decide, is this monochromatic, pretty similar or analogous? But to me, it kind of creates that drift effect. That was in a friend's garden. And then experts will tell us, experts in garden design will say maybe no more than 3 colors at once. But I always say it's your garden, you can do what you want, but it probably is pretty harmonious there. And there can be shades of the same color, right? It's part of those 3. And I thought this was really pretty as annuals. Julianne gave me that picture to use, and I thought it was harmonious. And I think the silver, the Dusty Miller in there kind of tones it down a bit and just makes it softer. And then texture, anytime you can add texture and color, you get interest and you get harmony. I think this is so pretty. You know, we have to really take the time to stop and kind of look. And if something catches our eye, then try to say, well, why did it catch my eye? What about this is really, really nice? And sometimes I will say to people, they'll come into, we'll go to visit somebody's garden and they'll say, gosh, that looks really good. And I have that plant in my garden. It doesn't look as good. Maybe it's the plant that's next to it. And it's the color combination that's making it really stand out for. So some of my plants have had frequent flyer miles. You'll have something in bloom in one part of your garden and something in bloom over here. And you're kind of thinking, well, would those be a good combination? That might be. So kind of look for those opportunities to kind of make some of those combinations. Blaine, of course, who's the peony person, I call him the peony king of Ottawa. He's got so much knowledge, but at his country place, he probably has about 500 peonies. They weren't all in bloom. He gave me this picture. He said, I don't have them when they're all in bloom, but it would be amazing to be there when they are all in bloom. I know I had a peony on the front cover of this presentation, the first slide. And it's funny, on my street, there are several of our homes around that have peonies in the front yard. And one of my friends was driving down and she said, is this Peony Street? So sometimes it just works out because I don't have room for several, but if there's one across the street and one a couple of doors down, it all kind of goes together. So take a look at what your neighbor's front yards have. And then color with mass plantings. So Marianne Van Berlo, probably some of you have visited her garden, but she has a whole bed of daylilies and a lot of them bloom at the same time. And it is breathtaking when you're there. So if you have the space, it's wonderful to have a mass planting. And then what's your favorite color? I think blue is my favorite color. And so this is the false blue indigo that I have. It's soon going to, it's an early bloomer. And I found a blue willow teapot. Maybe you don't like whimsy in your garden, but I do. So it's there. And then that little blue camellia in the corner over here, that's when, when you're going to the grocery store or Farm Boy or someplace around Easter, they seem to have these little camellias blooming and they don't cost much, $4.99 or something. And so it's lasted for me out in the garden for about 5 years. So I just planted it out there. So if you're picking up one of those little plants that don't cost much, check to see if it's a perennial and it can bloom in our area. And then the Iris Batik, some of the blues. And then color echo. So you saw that in the picture with the little teapot that was in the planter because there were blue flowers and it was picking up that blue. You saw it with the blue willow one with the baptisia. That's just in my garden. It's just a little hanging, my attempt at doing glass art. It's not very much, but it's really picking up the colors of the tulips, right? And then sometimes you get nasturtiums and you get a variety. So the throat of one nasturtium, the yellow one, is the same color as the other, more reddish orange one that's there. So color echo. And that one may look a little strange, that front corner picture. I just bruised some Cosmic Orange Cosmos seeds and a few bare spaces. And in the fall, September Charm Anemone pink, but the center of it is almost an orange gold. And so it was kind of an unintentional color echo combination, but it is kind of fun to have that in your garden as well. And then maybe here you can see some of the colors in the daylilies are picked up in the annuals that Gail has planted here. It's easy to do color echo in this, you know, when you're going to pick up maybe bedding plants at the nursery or some for containers, because they're mostly in bloom. It's a little harder to do it when you put your perennials in and you don't, you know, they're not in bloom when you see them. So I tuck color pops in unexpected places. So this is underneath my lilac before it blooms. There's primulas that are blooming. It's fun to see color in unexpected places. And don't forget the vertical spaces as well. That's a clematis in my garden. Judith, there are scarlet runner beans, which I love as well. And then morning glory, of course. But there's lots of different vertical plants that you can have. And then color pop. When I mentioned at the very first how when we perceive color, we also are influenced by the background. So when I visited this house, it was on PEI, Queen Anne style, beautiful old home, and then white, and then he had all these wonderful colorful plants next to it. It really looked lovely. And sometimes you can get pops of color from exuberant blooms. So this daylily, this moon witch daylily on the left here, it just blooms so profusely at a time that it really takes my eye in the garden, though it's not a colorful plant. So sometimes just exuberant blooms. And of course, for Cosmea will, Lucifer, that one is, it will definitely take your eye. If you have really small flowers, sometimes you don't want them too deep in your garden bed. So this is the Tricytrus or toad lily, and it's right by the front walkway because it's an interesting little bloom. It's almost like you want to look inside and see all the little parts. So I would miss that if it was farther in my bed. And then that's the Iris domestica. And I don't think I would see those, I call them freckles on the petals, but it's right by my back steps. So if you have small, interesting blooms, and then there's a lot of foliage accompanying them, you may want to get those blooms a little closer to you to really see them. And you can repeat a favorite summer color into the fall. So that was a daylily on the right that I really liked. And then that's my fall mum. So it's another color I like in my garden. And then color and shade. Who was telling me they had mostly shade? Yes. So that Astilbe, that Rhineland, I got that a long time ago. And it seems to be one that can take drought a little better. Like I do water it, but most Astilbes, as you know, unless you put it in moist shade, it's going to crisp up. And I've taken a lot of it, but that one is a good one. And then the Brunera, Jack Frost, there's different Brunera. Of course, bleeding hearts, quickfire hydrangea. It gets a little bit of sun, but it's mainly in shade in my garden. This is forget-me-nots. Now, forget-me-nots are on, I think they're category 4 on the invasive because they can spread. But when I looked at this picture, I was kind of thinking about Monet and talking about having blue underneath maybe the shadows of a tree and how it accentuates the blue. This is more Persicaria, which is a really nice one in the shade. Turtlehead or Shilome as well. This was in a Friends, and then she has coleus and other things mixed in there. So she gets lots of color in her shaded garden. And then this was, this master gardener has kind of lived all over Canada, and she doesn't live here anymore because her husband is military. But when she was here, she planted this blue-eyed Mary, and it blooms in the fall, and it is a shade plant. If you have a little microclimate somewhere in your garden that is a little warmer, because this is probably more a zone 6, but sometimes it's good to try some of these plants to see if they'll make it. And there's always the color green. And you know, Kermit used to sing, it's not easy being green. But I took this picture at Reeford Gardens. It was after a rain, and I mean, it's a lovely climate there as well. Everything looks so fresh and green. But when it's monochromatic, as we said before, you can pick out the various shades of green, the different shapes of leaves, and so forth. Be careful with variegation in the shade, though. You know, you can get all these hostas now that have so much variegation, and some of it's sure, but you don't want the whole shaded area to be variegated because your eyes won't know where to look. You know, it's just a little bit too much.
Those ferns will march through and take over that floor.
Yeah, well, I think they've got gardeners at Reeford that go through that. Yeah. And then this was another showing green with the Rogersia and the Helleborus. It just a different texture of the leaves and that. Because really green is nature's color. When the blooms go, we're going to be left with green. So, you know, varying the texture, the shape of the different leaves and so forth, just to make it interesting, is good. And then white. White is a color. And a lot of us, I was the same. I would say, oh, I'll plant a white flower here. White goes with everything, doesn't it? But white is a very powerful color. It actually draws your eye quickly. And sometimes because it draws your eye, brighter colors next to it may fade a bit. So it shows best in early morning or late afternoon, of course. And it's really nice at dusk because it really grabs your eye. But just to remember how powerful it is when you're putting plantings together. So this is, this is very pretty. So when you look here in my garden, where did I make a mistake? You tell me. Because I did.
Nothing in the foreground.
What'd you say?
White ones that need something in the foreground.
I know. So the white doesn't really show up with that fence. Where the others with the echinacea and the leotis too. So I moved it. But I was thinking, gosh, that just doesn't. It's not going to pop against such a background. So now it's it with more green, where it actually does pop when they do. And then sometimes it's other things you do in your landscape. A friend and I were at this lady's house. We were making one of those fabric things for our garden, our pieces. And when I went into her garden, it's not a very big garden. I love the shed. I love the red door. And that's going to be 3 seasons. So sometimes, you know, just if you do have a shed or you have something that you painted, you know, it certainly can give you color, background color every season. So when I'm not gardening, I'm hooking. And so I'm playing with colors. And I bet you there's a lot of you in this audience that are, I don't know if you're quilters or you're knitters or you're home designers, or even when you're buying your clothes, you're always combining colors and you know what works in your eyes. So yeah, just have fun with color in your garden. So any questions? Yeah.
Interested in on the various proposals.
And have you done the same one as, he's asking about Bosnia, how long I had it planted there, if I had trouble, if I do anything to protect it and protect it from squirrels. Now, the Lucifer is the one that I have in my garden, and that's one that is pretty good to leave over winter here. But some of the other varieties, was it Lucifer, was it the Riffle? So any year that I've planted a perennial for the first time, once the ground is frozen, I will bring more leaves to give it a little more insulation. I mean, we had lots of snow this winter, but in the first season for perennials, I will often do that, especially if I planted any late in the season, right? I want to give that extra insulation, but I don't do anything. I've given Crocosmia away. But I know that I wouldn't try any of the other cultivars and think, and even Ed Lawrence, when he used to talk about lifting them. But I've had luck with and I'm in Orleans and clay soil, so.
Just leave them.
Yeah, I just leave them in. I cut down the foliage a bit, and that's it. The squirrels mostly leave them alone. They do lots of other stuff that they're into, but yeah, they kind of leave that alone.
Do they multiply?
Yes, they do. That's why I give them away. They multiply a lot.
Yeah, you mentioned a white bush that was covered with butterflies, chocolate that. And then the
Okay, so the Sinantium ascolium, the other name for it is cruel plant. Cruel, C-R-U-E. Like nasty good, but anyways, it's not, but I know I'll write it down for you and give it to you after, but it's a good one. But the only place, maybe others sell it now, but years ago I bought it at White House Perennials. But someone else must sell it, but it's not as easy to find. And then, but I know when I was there last year, I saw it. Now I know that, I think that business is for sale, right? Did you guys hear that? I thought I heard that, so we hope someone takes it over. Any other questions? Yes.
I have one fan flower also. So I have part of my garden with double food flower. And this sort of starting to try and grow older against margins. So what's the best way to propagate them? Let the seeds or just let them fall?
And what is your plant?
It's a balloon flower. Double balloon flower.
Yeah, but you know what, is it an iris? Is it a, what is it? Oh, balloon flower.
Yeah.
Oh, I've dug those up and split them in pieces, yeah. I mean, obviously, I usually take some of the seed pods off, but I know some fall, but no, I've moved that around my garden just by digging it up. I thought you said blue flower and I was thinking, so balloon flower, yes.
Just let it stop it. What's the actual purpose?
I've actually, it does increase, like it increases in size. I don't know if I've had any that's really come from seeds, because I've probably taken, because I tidy it up, I'm a tidier, so I'm kind of deadheading and I don't let go to seed a lot. But I've certainly dug up and moved it to other parts of my garden, so I've more than one patch of it now. Yeah. Yeah, somebody else, oh yes.
Can I ask one more?
Oh, sure.
On monthly dog show, you.
Yes.
That show, but yeah, the massive line too, so LNA, the red. Really wild. Do you know of any vendors that would sell
Yeah, I've seen Helenium, but you're saying of a red, eh?
Yeah, this is red.
Yeah. I haven't seen it in red. I seem to see it more in bronzy and the yellows, of course, but.
And those colors that you see the available.
No, but boy, Google is a pretty good thing.
Okay.
And then if you have, do you have a garden center that you go to, like a local business? Because you often ask them.
Yeah, I think that's.
Yeah, I know we get a lot of questions on our Facebook page, like this week somebody had wanted, it was a beautiful. It was a beautiful hydrangea, I could see, it was almost eye candy. But then when you go into research it, you see that it's really hardy in zone 6. It's not going to be hardy here, so, you know, you kind of look to make sure that it's going to be hardy here, yeah. Any other questions? Questions?
I'm just gonna ask any of the people who are on Zoom, if you have a question, if you want to just type it in the chat before we conclude. So we'll give you a minute if you do have a question.
I bet you can't wait to get started, hey? It's really, it's just so wet, hey? I mean, you can't really go out and do anything. You don't want to walk on anything and compact it, but I think it's going to be nice tomorrow.
I think there are less fun.
Yeah,
Go out every day and chat, daffodils and irises.
yeah. I know, it's just, it's been a long winter this year.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, I think we're okay. So thank you very much, Nancy, for your wonderful presentation. I want people to know that Nancy was very gracious. She's allowed us to record her presentation. So we will make it available to members. And if there are things that you wanted to check out again, we will make it available for about 2 weeks. And you'll be able to review it again as later. Now, we have one last task for Nancy. That is the draw for, we have some nice door prizes.
they look nice.
So, Nancy, if you would be kind enough
Yeah,
to pick a number. Over there.
day number 15.
So number 15 is Karen Widarza. And it's the garden in winter. So. Yes.
Oh my goodness.
This one was donated by Trudy, and it's a Lee Valley self-watering seed starter. So very appropriate for this time of year.
So it's number 18.
And 18 is Suzanne. Why? And again, we have another self-watering system. So again, a great way to get started. And this is number 2, which would be Liz Livermore. So that concludes the formal part of the meeting. We do have refreshments over here. So we'd like you to take advantage of that and to socialize. Sandra Hessian, we have our opportunity table. So if you'd like to avail yourself and make a purchase of any of the items over there. And for the people who are coming to the District 2 meeting on Saturday, if any of you wanted to come a little earlier to help with any last minute setting up, or if you wanted to come on Friday, we're doing a setup as well between 7 and 8:30. I'll send out a reminder tomorrow, but we're always welcome people who can come out to help. We don't have to set up the tables and the chairs, but we have a few things that we need to organize, particularly the silent auction. So we'd be appreciative of any help of that nature. And again, just a reminder, if you'd like to still register, you can see me after the meeting or contact me online. So thank you again, Nancy. That was a great presentation. And enjoy the rest of the evening. Thank you. Oh, sorry. There was one other thing. Apologize. Sabella.
Yes.
So Sabella mentioned, I'll let you explain what it is.
Okay, I live in a condo that has a pretty nice garden around it. The condo is about to undergo a multi-year major renovation. So all the gardens are unfortunately going to have to be. So, it's going to be done in phases. The first phase is starting soon. And we're going to dig up, some of the perennial gardens, near the parking lots, so we need people to dig up plants, to donate to the Stephen Lewis Foundation. Through a 3-day plant sale at the Unitarian Church on Fury, May 8 to 10. So if anyone would like to lend a hand to dig up and pot these plants, please come and see me and register your interest, and I can email you the details of when exactly our hands are needed. So the more hands we have, the more plants we save. And at the next phases, we might be able to get those plants for our plants. Or for other causes that we wanted to do. So thank you very much. Please come and see me if you have the time and energy.
And we'll send out the reminder again by email. So if people are still thinking about it, we'll give you an opportunity to get all the information. So thank you again. And again, please help yourself to the dinner.
Who came up with that? Yes.
It's good to find.
It's just you don't have them spotted.
Thank you. It was busy and it kind of it's a lot of things that don't make. Although I'm grateful for him to be here, maybe kind of the event.